Today we're going to turn a couple of pens. This is a great easy project that makes a useful item and they make for great gifts. Now turning pens is really fun because it goes quickly and you end up with a great looking product. Very briefly, the steps are to first cut your blank to size. Here's a couple of different types of blanks, wood blanks in this case. So we'll cut that in half for the two parts of the pen. The next step is to drill holes in those parts, and that is to fit in these brass tubes, which is the interior of the pen. We'll stick those into the blanks. Then we go ahead and square up the ends of our blanks, make them nice and square. And then we go ahead and turn the pen here on the lathe, turn it down to size, and then finally go through assembly, which includes, putting in the ink and the tip and the cap, all the little parts, pushing them together, and you end up with an awesome pen. Now today I'm going to turn a couple of slimline pens, and this is a super popular kit. They're very easy to make. So we'll go ahead and do slimline, but there's a variety of pen kits you can use to create all different kind of look and feels for different pens. Now you can make a pen out of a variety of different pen blanks, and they sell all kinds of colors and grain patterns and wood and acrylic and all different kinds of things. So definitely browse through and find ones that you're really interested in turning. I've got a few wood blanks here, and I'm going to pick and choose a couple of these for making our slimline pens today. Now you can also get wood scraps from your own shop, of course. Just be aware, think on a really small scale for the grain or figure. Pens are very small, maybe a little bit different than what you're used to working with. So you got to pick grain patterns or figure that's on a very small scale for a pen. Now the first step is going to be to cut these two blanks in half for the two halves of the pen. So make sure you mark your parts so you know how they go back together. And if you're using a lot of blanks of the same type of wood, make sure you mark them clearly so once you cut them in half, you can put the same parts back together again. I marked my pen blank about a 1/16 longer than the brass tubes, and then go ahead and cut it off at the bandsaw. We first mark an X on the end of our pen blank to define the center, and then make sure that our drill bit is lined up with that X. So here's the pen blank being held vertically in the drill press. Now you can purchase a vise for doing this operation to hold the pen blank perfectly in line with the drill bit, or just use a shop-made version like I have here, which is just a right angle. I've got a backer board underneath, pen blank in here, perfectly in line with my drill bit, and I'm ready to go. The next step is to glue the brass tubes into our wood blank. But before we do that, we want to rough them up on some sandpaper. Here I'm using 150. Just rub it back and forth, and that'll give us a good adhesion with the glue. Here you can see a close-up of a roughed up tube on the bottom compared to a brand new one there on the top. Now I like to use CA glue for gluing the brass tubes in. I've got an accelerator and a CA quick setting CA glue, 5 to 15 seconds. You can also use quick setting epoxy for doing this, but you want something that's going to set up really quickly so you can keep on turning. You don't have to wait for that to dry. So what I'll go ahead and do is put in some accelerator inside the pen blank, a couple of squirts, get that in there, and then I'll go ahead and pour some of the CA glue here onto the tube and get that all over. Rub that around, get it all over. You can also put this on some paper and just rub the tube in it, working quickly. And then I'll just shove that in here and give it a spin as I go, get the glue everywhere, and get that seated right below the wood. And I'll go ahead and do that for all the tubes, and they'll be set up here in just a minute or so and be ready to go. The next thing we want to do is square the end of the blank, and we use a special tool called a barrel trimmer to do that. And this barrel will go down inside the brass tube and clean out any glue that might have gotten there, and then this part here at the top will square up the end of the blank. Now you can do this in a drill press, or I'm doing it here with a handheld drill. Just be careful. Sharp, it goes pretty quickly. And you want to take it down until you just touch the brass tube. Here I haven't touched it yet, and you'll see when you start hitting the brass tube, it'll get a little shiny. And there it is. Took off a little bit of the brass, squared up the end, and you can see a little bit of shine on the end of that brass tube. The one on the left hasn't been squared yet, and you can see the shine on the brass on the one on the right, and that's when you know you've squared it right down to the brass tube. Okay, we've got our tubes glued in and the ends squared up. It's time to put the pen blanks onto the mandrel on the lathe and turn us a pen. So I'll first thread a bushing onto the mandrel. And this is where the alignment lines we did originally help to line up the blank correctly. Throw one end of the blank on, a couple more bushings, another blank lined up the correct way, and final bushing, and then thread it on. Okay, I've got the pen blank mounted, tailstock tightened up, and tool rest in place, ready to start turning this pen. I've now got the pen blank roughed out to the rough shape and dimensions I want. Now I'm going to switch to a finishing tool and get it very close to the bushings, just a little bit proud, and we'll finish it up with sandpaper. I'm now going to go ahead and move the tool rest out of the way and switch over to sandpaper, starting at 150, and just work my way up. Here I've sanded the pen up to 400 grit with a dry sandpaper. Now I'm going to switch over to a wet sandpaper, which I have a 600 grit and then a 1500 grit that I'll go ahead and wet sand the pen, and then I'll go ahead and apply some finish. There's no particular reason that I'm using a wet sandpaper other than that's what I had on hand. For finish, I've got a can of lacquer that I'm going to go ahead, I've got it in the shop, I'll go ahead and apply that. It dries super fast, so it's a great finish for applying here on the lathe. And I'm going to follow that up with just a little bit of paste wax. I've got a dark paste wax for the darker wood. So a little bit of lacquer and then a little bit of wax, and it'll be all set. Okay, pen is all turned, finish is all applied. Time to pop it off of the lathe and assemble the pen. Now before we go through assembly of the pen, let me quickly tell you about this book that I found pretty cool. It's the Pen Turner's Workbook, 2nd edition. Now what I love about this book is it goes through all the basic steps that we've done today and talks about those in a little bit more detail, all the steps for making a pen. But what's awesome about this book are two things. One, it goes through some advanced techniques for making your pens more distinctive, adding some little details to your turnings that's going to make them stand out and make them pretty cool. And it goes through some pictures of those and then talks about how to do those, the tools needed, etc. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that I love about this is it just has a gallery of awesome looking pens. So you can flip through this book, find a lot of different styles of pens, and get some ideas for pens that you want to create in your shop. It's not a very expensive book, so I definitely recommend at least checking it out. And if you pick up a copy, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Here are all the parts laid out for assembly, from the tip and the front tube to the twist mechanism, the band, the clip, and the cap. First, we're going to push the tip onto the front tube. Now you can use a pen assembly vise for this, but in a pinch you can also just use a woodworking vise. Just make sure as you put it in that it's going straight into the tube, or else you could crack it. Next, we push the twist mechanism onto the other end of the same tube up into the indication mark. Next, we'll slide the band over the twist mechanism. It's a little bit tricky to just get over the first part, but then it slides right on. Next, we'll put the cap onto the clip. We're going to clip onto the cap, press that on, and then we'll push that assembly onto the rear tube. Finally, we'll slide the ink onto the front tube, thread that in, and then put the two halves together. Twist for the pen to come out, twist back for it to retract, and there you got it, slimline pen. So there it is, turning a slimline pen from start to finish, and you saw just how easy that is. Now there are just a variety of pen kits on the market, but just be careful because each pen kit uses slightly different bushings, different size tubes, so you might need a different size drill bit, different size barrel trimmer, so it can get a little confusing, so just be careful when you're out there shopping for different kits that you might need some different accessories. But you can see how easy it is to turn a pen or pencil. There are just numerous different wood blanks, or of course you can use scraps from your shop to make them all different kinds of styles. And you can see how fast it is to make them. Now especially, you saw the steps there that you can start batching these out. And if you do things in batches, they go really, really quickly because you've got all your tools set up and boom, you can turn out a ton of these at once. Which reminds me, I think I'm going to go turn some more.